What's up, guys? It is Cameron Fous. What is today? It's December 11th, 2013. I just want to go over a couple of the trades, a couple of stocks from the watch list that I did not trade, unfortunately. ASTC, most notably. Called this out several times in chat. Had some perfect setups as well this morning. Unfortunately, just missed it by pennies at a time. Threw out some radar alerts on it at the perfect times, also on the watch list from last night. But was just, didn't pull the trigger in the exact moments that I needed to. But taking a look at ASTC, before today's breakout trigger, this is on the watch list, or I started noting this yesterday pre-market when this was gapping open. This thing is basically in a Fous force pattern. The lead-in trend is basically almost about neutral here, and then we had this huge rip on volume plus price action here, and started forming up this kind of triangle pattern here on the daily chart, where we can start drawing this triangle with the neckline breakout area in the 160 to about 175 range. It's not a perfect breakout triangle here, but basically in that range. Is kind of that breakout. As I put on the watch list last night, watching for the high of the day breakout, which is basically over today's high, or yesterday's high, I should say, 163. Looking into this morning, this thing just exploded and ripped, huge on volume here. Right out of the gates here, this popped right here. Out of the gates this morning, basically broke, basically only a 2-minute candle. Within the first 2 minutes, I guess on the third minute, it actually broke out again highs. So it ripped very, very quickly. I was watching it, but just kind of hesitated to buy in immediately. And then next thing you know, it was all the way up to about 172 here. I did actually throw out an order at 172 to buy in here on this kind of secondary F1 breakout over this first kind of flag pattern here. As always, an F1 breakout is basically same kind of thing as a daily chart Fous force pattern, but it's just on a much shorter term scale. This is the 1-minute intraday chart we're looking at over here. As you can see here, we got that first nice run up in price action plus that volume push. We're still right in the 13 EMA on the 1-minute chart here, but once that kind of forms the top there on that first initial run, and you can form up this flag here on the intraday chart, that's an F1 trigger flag breakout. And as soon as that breaks out highs of the day here, which is at 172, that's kind of the F pattern breakout. From there, you can kind of ride the 13 EMA, or as long as it holds above that breakout zone, which is currently at 172, it could definitely still rip to the upside. But when they start kind of pushing back down below, either below the 13 EMA, which is the first sell trigger, then if it starts breaking down below that 172 mark, or that actual neckline, that's also, it doesn't mean the stock's going to completely crash or totally reverse, but it's definitely a sign that it might be a false breakout and start sliding back down. But in this case, it just came back down, retested that support before absolutely continuing to rip up. So I tried to get in there at 172. Next thing you knew, it just barely ticked, and then within a minute, it was already up close to 180. So I just barely missed that, unfortunately. Threw a radar alert out in the chat room. So I know a couple of you guys got in here on ASTC. It just ripped very quickly, but just in general, the stock kind of trades sketchily. If you look at yesterday's price action, whoops, you can see it just, a very thinly traded stock. It sells off very, heavily on low volume. So, if I get in with 10,000 shares, all of a sudden it drops 10 cents very easily on me. I'm down $1,000. So I was a little bit hesitant to already buy into this. But it was a very nice pattern. As you can see, just compared from yesterday's price action as opposed to today's price action, there was actually volume and trading going on, whereas yesterday, that's why it kind of sketched me out. There just really wasn't any trading going on. It was a very thinly traded stock. There's this a lot of trading time throughout the day where absolutely zero volume was being traded. So that definitely kind of sketches me out, because I don't like trading something that I could potentially get stuck in a low volume sell-off in. Moving forward today, though, we did get that F1 breakout, and then I threw out another radar alert here into the close. Let's actually switch to a 2-minute chart here just to kind of get a better view. We basically had an F3 breakout here into the close. We continued to peak out toward right around $2 per share and actually had this nice F3 breakout. F3 breakout is basically the same kind of pattern I'm looking for in an F1. It just happens within the last 2 hours of the session. Typically when an F3 breakout happens, that usually leads towards a gap open into the following day. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this gap open tomorrow. That's kind of how I traded Plug, P-L-U-G, several times earlier last week. I would buy into the F3 into the close. Next thing you know, the stock would open up 15% and I'd lock in those profits. Just because there was a lot of momentum there. So we do have a lot of momentum on ASTC. I threw out a radar alert right here at about 197. In addition to it being right at that $2 mark, if it breaks over 2, a whole number, that's definitely a big barrier to break. And if it does sustain that breakout, that kind of leads into the next leg up, as you saw here on ASTC, and it did. And now it's up to about 225. It closed at 215. It's up to 222. And after hours trading, so it is starting to gap open slightly into tomorrow based off this F3 breakout pattern. So awesome, setup on ASTC. Unfortunately, I just missed it by a few pennies each time on my actual potential buys. Rather than me sending out a radar alert, wasting time doing that. I wasn't really prepared to buy. I probably should have just sent out a real alert. Unfortunately, I did not get in, but a lot of you guys did get in and are making bank here. So it's important that you're understanding these patterns and why I send out the radar alerts and whatnot as well. And you should definitely check out Fous 4 Part 2 if you have not, because it's definitely going to help you understand these patterns and how to identify them. But moving on here, let's take a look at GSAT. This is my latest stock pick. For those of you who have been around for the last month or two, I've been trading in and out of this stock many times, and I've been waiting for this breakout. I've been trying to trade this breakout that we just happened to have today many times. I was long about 40,000 shares just a week or so ago. Fortunately stopped out, but it continued to ride the 13 EMA, and we finally got this huge breakout here on this huge spike in volume. What it was, I have no idea, but I noticed it right out of the gates this morning. If we look back at the trading here out of the gates this morning, I first saw this huge spike right here. We had a $2 million share buy spike. So I was like, all right, something's definitely up here. I was monitoring the volume, comparing it to the previous average days here, and we were definitely seeing a huge increase in volume. Then we started getting some more buyer action here, and I eventually went long at 176. Continued to add. I'm now long 25,000 shares. Averaged in at 170, and we did finally get the highest closing breakout that we've had so far, and we have basically an F3 into the close, which is what I bought into. We did have a lot of nice buyers that came in to the close with volume, so I'm definitely stoked on GSAT. My price target, as it always has been since I've been trying to trade this breakout here around the 180 area, is going to be $2 per share, because that's the next whole number resistance, and whole numbers are always an area where people tend to take profits at, especially when a breakout is leading into that resistance level. So my first profit target on this was about $1 when I first initially bought into the force pattern at about 64 cents down here. We've been buying into this for a while, and it's continued to ride the 13 EMA, but breaking down below it a few times. 13 EMA is not perfect, but it's basically ridden this trend the whole way up, and now I'm back in again up at 183. Profit target from now is about $2 per share on this swing trade. Looking up next, here's let's take a look at RNN. This was another one that I threw out a radar alert. Unfortunately, did not get in time. A couple of guys were in here real early. Dave 19, I believe, was in. I mentioned it pre-market, then singles and doubles, who's been a long time Fous Alerts member. I got in at 42 cents. I threw a radar alert out of this at about 41.5, noting the F1 pattern. So basically, same thing here. You got to understand what these F1 patterns are. I didn't take the trade. I tend to shy away from penny stocks. I try to trade stocks over $1 per share. Especially with RNN, did have news out this morning, but you really never know. A lot of these stocks, the majority of the time, they're going to be some quick little spike up that you get stopped out on, or you buy into momentum. Next thing you know, the stock's in the red territory, and you're screwed out. Trying to figure out if you should take the loss or hold on to it. But sometimes they do work out, and when they do, you can make a lot of money. It's just they're very inconsistent and difficult to trade because they're so volatile. But looking at RNN here, we did get that nice spike up here on volume. Started riding the 13 EMA here on the 2-minute chart. As we moved forward, I sent out a radar alert before this actually happened. So it was actually, let's switch to the 1-minute chart. I believe it was right around in this area, sent out a radar saying, watch for the F1 breakout trigger above the about 41.5 to 42. We did have that high spike here right out of the gates on about 260,000 shares. But as soon as that broke out of this breakout trigger level, this thing just continued to grind it up from about 42 all the way up to 52. I think it was about 30% gain there. And we actually had an F3 kind of formation into the close here. Closing up, close to highs. It's actually up at 50 cents after hours. I know a couple of you guys got into the close, so it could definitely be, a potential gapper, but, a stock like this could also easily, sell off back to 42 cents tomorrow, no problem. So it's always a risky play when you're playing these tiny penny stocks, but if you get on the right side of them, you can make a lot of money in a very short amount of time, but I try to shy away, if and when I can. Speaking of penny stocks, let's take a look at LQMT. This is one that spiked up again today. There was some, bullcrap rumor out again. They've been milking this iPhone rumor for, it's probably been years now since I first started trading this stock. I don't know if we can go back that far. But it's probably been since about sometime in 2011 since I've been trading in and out of LQMT here and there. It's all based on the rumor that Apple is going to use them in their products, of which they still have not yet. And they still keeps coming out with these dumb rumors saying that they are. Whether they're going to use them or not, I don't know. I don't really care. But what I'm looking at here on LQMT, as you know, I was long 100,000 shares. I got averaged in about 17.9 cents. I did get stopped out last week. I lost 1,700 bucks. Unfortunately, but it did spike back up again on another stupid, release about the actual iPhone 6 potentially using a 3D printing system and using liquid metal to build that foundation for the phone. So whether that's true or not, who knows? I don't really care. But I'm looking at this chart as a Fous 4 potential revival pattern. If this can break out over 20 cents, it's still forming up the pattern. I was trying to buy into that breakout this time. I was loading up here. I bought as high as 19.5 cents because I thought it was going to potentially break out above this 20-cent trigger there. And if it does do that, if you can just take a look at this, channel pattern, this is a huge, potential to rip, 100% if this breaks out of this pattern. So I was starting to load up here. I eventually got a little bit too heavy up near highs, and unfortunately, I had to stop out because I wasn't about to let this continue to fall. And I went in heavy near that breakout zone, but it was actually just another test of that resistance area. So I'm watching this back again. We did get a little slight volume increase and a nice little rip in price action here today. I was tempted to buy in here today. I actually had a 50,000 share order to buy in at 16.8 cents on this pullback, but as you can see, that was the low here, this pullback, and so my order did not get filled, and then it kind of spiked up, and it's now at 17.2 cents after at the last closing trade. So I'm definitely still watching this. It's still, the chart is still forming. It's still a pre-breakout of a Fous 4 pattern. And, when you're buying pre-breakout, there's going to be a lot of chop. It's, it's really can basically chop in between 15 cents and 20 cents. Depending how many shares you have, that can, definitely swing your position dollar size quite a bit. And I don't like, putting myself in losing positions. But we're down here, kind of back in the middle of this consolidation, right above the right around the 13 EMA. So, buying in pre-breakout here with, a potentially smaller position might be a good idea. I almost pulled the trigger. I did have an order, it just did not fill. But it's definitely still watching this for that trigger breakout over the about 20 cent level. So LQMT on high watch. But anyways, that's about it for today's video lesson. Hopefully we have some more trades coming through. GSAT, hoping this can hit $2 by the end of the week. It is Wednesday. If we can hit $2 by Friday, I'm going to go out and buy a new desk that's about 3,200 bucks. So hopefully that happens so I can get this sweet new desk and write it off my taxes.